Hello, EduMagicians. Welcome to the EduMagic Podcast with your host, Dr. Sam Fesich. Dr. Sam is a professor of education, author of EduMagic, and a pumpkin spice latte fan. This podcast is designed for pre-service teachers. Remember, friends, teaching doesn't begin at graduation, but during that first class at 8 a.m. Let's get this party started.
I'm Jake Miller from the Educational Duct Tape Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect those of others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey EduMagicians, it's Sam, and before we start into this episode, I want to share with you about an amazing resource. It's called the Educator Candidate Member Portal. AAEE provides you with resources such as virtual job fairs, a job board, interview tips and prep, resume building, webinars. You can even get a copy of the Job Search Handbook digitally. So head on over to aaee.org and create your free Educator Candidate Member account today. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the EduMagic Podcast. My name is Dr. Sam Fesich, and today I have with me Maddie from the Edtech Classroom. You might know her over on Instagram. You might subscribe to her podcast. But friends, today she and I are going to be sharing all about 10 EdTech tips for new teachers. Maddie, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm Maddie, like Sam said, from the Edtech Classroom Podcast. I'm so excited that we're doing this crossover episode today. I've seen Sam online. I've listened to her podcast, but I'm just super excited that we're recording together today. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
I'm really excited for this recording too. These crossover episodes remind me of like old school CW, where Iron Man or the Flash would be on like the Thor's episode or whatever, all the example of the Marvel characters. But I feel like we are Thor and Iron Man when it comes to EdTech, and we're so excited to share these tools with our listeners today.
It's so funny that you said that because my mind goes straight to the CW too.
Yes, it's great. It's good times. So Maddie, for those who are listening from the EduMagic Podcast, can you share about who you are, your teaching story, and about your show as well, the Edtech Classroom Podcast?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a K through 5 STEM teacher, and I'm also an EdTech coach in Los Angeles. I've been working in education for about 6 years or so now. I'm really, really passionate about education, project-based learning, all things related to EdTech. And then more recently, I started doing this thing on the side, Edtech Classroom. So I have a podcast to help support teachers in exploring innovative and creative learning models in their classrooms. So obviously, as the name suggests, I talk a lot about EdTech, but I also talk about educational theory. I really like to, take these big pie in the sky ideas and break them down in ways that are really practical and applicable for teachers. So you'll leave every episode of my podcast with some sort of takeaway that you can implement in your classroom today or tomorrow or, whenever. Yeah, and I'm pretty active on YouTube too. So you can check out my YouTube channel, EdTech Classroom. I post tons and tons of tech tutorials on how to use EdTech tools. Different things like that, tips and strategies for how you can use technology to sort of amplify the learning experience in your classroom.
I love how you use the word amplify learning experiences, because that really is what EdTech does. It takes your great pedagogy, it takes your materials and resources, it takes your teacher talents, and it really does amplify those abilities, those strengths, those features in your lessons. And I love how you share that. Amplify. Yeah, I love that. That's great.
Yeah, totally. I think that a lot of teachers feel really fearful of technology, which is something that I really, try and help teachers wrestle with. I think especially some teachers who have been in the industry for a really long time are fearful that technology is going to take over their classroom. And that's really not the case. It can just be a really helpful tool, like I said, to just enhance and amplify the learning experience for students.
And Maddie, you're also an avid reader, right? I mean, you're always reading pedagogy, books about pedagogy and things to learn, and you're always bringing that back to your teachers. And before we started recording, you shared, I
feel a little bit like a therapist. Like I'm helping my teachers' mindsets. I'm helping. It is about integrating technology, but also being that cheerleader, being that counselor, helping somebody through something. If they need handheld, you can do this. We can do this together. Let's rock this lesson. And I think that's a big part of educational technology. It's about the tools, but it's also about the person who's using them.
Definitely, definitely. I think so much in education for teachers. I don't know, this is something that I've spent a lot of time thinking about, is that teachers are really great at teaching, but we're not always the best learners. And so something that I've really tried to, something I've really tried to work on that I think has made me a better teacher is learning and reading as much as possible. Really big educational theory and pedagogy is really overwhelming, I think, for a lot of teachers, and rightfully so. But what I really try to do is take this big information and say, okay, what are the key takeaways? How can I improve my teaching? And then what I learned from my experience, then I hope to bring to other people as well.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, and I'd love to, for my guests to, or for my listeners too, I'd love to hear a little bit more about what you do as well.
Yeah, I'd be happy to share. So my name is Dr. Sam Fessich. I'm the host of the EduMagic Podcast, which is a podcast designed just for future educators. So if you know a student teacher, a field student, someone who's going to college to be a teacher, tell them to go check out the podcast. It's designed just for them. I teach future educators at Grove City College, and we work in areas related to educational technology, special education. I work with mostly freshmen in their intro classes, and then I also get to oversee a couple of our student teachers. And it's really cool to see them grow and learn from freshman year all the way through senior year to become educators of excellence and really rock their college careers, slay student teaching, and find an amazing job. I'm the author of EduMagic, a guide for pre-service teachers, and co-author of EduMagic, Shine On, a guide for new teachers. And I just love supporting those future educators, bringing up that next generation of teachers. So thanks, Maddie, for asking.
Yeah, for sure. I love what you do so much. I think what I'm really interested in, and maybe this is because I'm an elementary school teacher, but I find it really fascinating, the idea of teaching future teachers, because I would imagine in a lot of ways, the strategies that you're teaching your students, you're also probably implementing as a teacher yourself. So it feels like it's probably a very meta experience.
Exactly.
But I think I remember being in grad school and, studying education, obviously, and being so excited to go to class because I'd leave and I'd be like, okay, awesome. So this, station rotation model is something I can do in my classroom with my future students. So it's really neat that is what you're up to.
Yeah, I really like it. It really is a fun time. I enjoy using the technology and having them think about how to use it in their classrooms. But the technology tools that we use, we make sure that they fit several criteria, that they can go across different grade levels. So I teach K to 12 different certification areas within there, students getting different certification areas. So it has to work like across those grade levels. It has to be free because we're for college students and sometimes teachers, we got to specialize in free. So it has to be free, has to work across platform, different grade levels, subject areas, those types of things. It has to be user friendly and quick for them to learn, because honestly, if it takes too long to load, if it's too complicated to share, I don't have time for that. I'm just going to do something else. So I really have to think about from the student perspective about how am I going to use this in my classroom, and how can I help my students see some benefits of using educational technology? Because as you know, Maddie, sometimes things are just easier with paper and pencil, but technology can also help to save us some teacher time. It's all about the why behind technology and not just putting it in the classroom because it's glittery and fun, but because, it really serves a purpose.
Yep, absolutely. That so closely aligns with my personal philosophy around technology. It's not always the flashiest tool that's the best. It's really about the content and the ways that students are able to engage with the tool and the content.
Right. You don't always need a glitter cannon in your classroom, Some things will just work out okay. So, Maddie, we have 10 EdTech tips for our new teachers listening today, and I think they're going to be surprised about some of them. At the end of the show, though, guys, we're going to share some of our favorites go-to tools. So I'm excited about that. So I'm going to hop in and start with our first one, take small steps. And I think that this is really important now, especially during COVID. And as we think about using technology in the classroom, it's so easy to just go online and see what's out there for free. A lot of companies still have their products for free or for trial use. So don't go out and learn all the things. Take small steps. Pick one or two. Think about the why behind why you're going to be using that tool. Will it help engage students? Will it save you teacher time? Will it authentic? Will it help them improve, engage, motivate your students? So take small steps. Do a search. Find something of interest. Don't go down that rabbit hole. Try just a couple of things and take small steps to really get to know that EdTech tool and see if it's going to help support your students in their learning.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that's really good advice, especially when thinking about, new teachers, many of which who might be, of the younger generation who are already pretty tech savvy. I think it can be easy if you think you have really strong tech skills to want to, try all the things. But I think you're so right. It's a really great idea to sort of take a step back, think about the, few tools you want to explore, do your research. And not only for you to not do all of the things, I also think for your students too. I think no matter what, grade level you teach, you can really overwhelm students by introducing too many tech tools. So also encourage your students to take small steps by introducing, not all the tools all at once.
I love that. I love how you're bringing in that student perspective. What's our next tip?
One of my tips was pretty similar of keeping it simple, but I think it's a little bit different in the sense that, I think it's really important to keep it simple in the sense that you're able to streamline your tech process. So, in this virtual learning environment that we're in right now, which I know is hopefully not going to be forever, but I think it's really important to have some sort of central tech tool that you're really, guiding students to so they know where to anticipate and expect to see their assignments. So whether that be a learning management system, Google Classroom, something like that, having a streamlined tool that you then use to introduce other tech tools. So for example, if I am a high school teacher and I use Google Classroom, if I want to introduce an assignment on Flipgrid, I can actually assign that through Google Classroom. So trying to keep things simple and streamline things can be really helpful, not only for you, but also for your students to stay organized.
Absolutely. Streamline that information. If you're using an LMS, make sure they know where to expect the content. Where can they find the assignments? Where can they find the readings or the discussions? And keeping that all in the same place so they can access it each time in the same way. I think that's so important. My next one is learn a few tools. So just like we want to make sure we're using research-based practices, pedagogies in our classroom, we want to use technology with purpose, with research behind it, with authenticity. We just don't want to throw in technology because it's shiny and glittery or we have 5 minutes left in the period. So we got to think about learning a few tools and learning them well. So we're going to share at the end of the episode a couple of our favorites, but really try to go in a couple of the tools that we'll mention today. And there's other tools out there that have tutorials that you can check out, that some of them have badging that you can do to really get familiar with the tool, to engage your students and motivate your students in learning through using that tool. There's YouTube videos out there. Some tools even have Twitter chats that they help support their audience with as well. So learn a few tools and learn them well. So go out there, maybe get certified in that tool or get a learning badge in that tool, or check out the YouTube video, binge all the stuff on there so you can learn about how to use that tool in your classroom and only help strengthen, your confidence with using them and practice using them in your classroom space.
Definitely. I love how in sync we are because Because my next tip is to really focus on content creation tools. So once you've sort of done your exploring, you've figured out which tools you're interested in, you've taken Sam's tips, you've checked out YouTube tutorials, Twitter chat support, etc. I think that the tools that really work best in the classroom, no matter what grade level you teach, are really tools that allow students to actually create something. So if you're a total screen time nut like I am, probably not a lot of people listening are, but I'm really interested in sort of the theory behind screen time. And so if we think about screen time and having 4 different categories, so we have, passive consumption, which might be something like watching television, interactive consumption, which might be something like, consuming something, but there's still there's a tongue twister. There's still an element of, interaction there. Then third category being communication. So think about like social media tools. And then lastly, content creation. So really the tools and apps that really allow students to actually create and produce something. So for me, when I think about, the best type of screen time that you can give students, whether they're kindergartners or college students, are really the tools that allow them to create final products, to showcase their learning, to reflect, things that really give them the ability to flex that creative muscle. Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So with my youngest students, I really love using Stop Motion Studio. So as the name suggests, it's basically an app that allows students to create stop motion animation. So think like, claymation, Wallace and Gromit type vibe. And I think that stop motion is a really great tool for students who are looking to practice their storytelling skills, but maybe they aren't, don't have the language ability yet to actually be able to write a story or tell a story through video. I think stop motion is a really great way to sort of achieve that. But I also even think, as an adult, I love making stop motion movies myself. So I think it can be a really fun tool for you to use no matter what age you are. Another really great content creation tool, I think, is Padlet. So Padlet is one of my favorite EdTech tools. It's pretty similar to Jamboard, but it kind of allows students to have these sort of sticky note style brainstorming, but you can do really creative things with Padlet as well. So I think that that's another example of a great content creation tool. Book Creator is another one that I like to use with my little ones. It allows students to create digital books. So those are just a couple of examples of ones that immediately come to mind.
I love it. Those are fantastic tools. And I love how you share about the importance of the student perspective when using those tools for brainstorming. You gave specific examples of when to use them. So my next tip is all about thinking about the why. So think about before you implement technology into the classroom, thinking about the why behind it. Why am I going to use this tool? Is it going to save me teacher time? Is it going to help my students? Is it going to engage my students, motivate them in new ways? Am I going to be able to download the data that I get from this tool, like using Nearpod or Pear Deck, and make teaching decisions based on that information? So think about the why behind the tool before you start to implement. And I think that will really help to guide you when thinking about when is this tool appropriate in my classroom? Because not every tool is appropriate for every single lesson that you're teaching. So thinking about the why, and before we even get into the what and the how, but really focusing in on that why, taking those little steps to learn different tools and focusing in on a few and thinking about how can they help me how can they help my students? How can they help me as a teacher?
Definitely. Thinking about the why is probably one of the most important things I think you can do as a teacher when implementing EdTech in your classroom. I listened to your episode about Bitmoji classrooms, and I really liked how I think when I think about conversation around like whether tech tools are flashy or effective, I think Bitmoji Classroom is really a hot topic. It's something that comes straight to mind for a lot of teachers right now. And I think the why behind it is really important, right? If it's so that you can have fun creating this, aesthetically pleasing and like fun and cutesy classroom, that might not necessarily be as effective as thinking about Bitmoji Classroom as a tool where you can introduce new content to students, sort of a place where you can house all of your information or your materials. So no matter what the tech tool is, I think thinking about the why is really critical, because it ultimately every tech tool has its pros and cons. Some tech tools are supposedly the best, but can be used in not very effective ways, and I think vice versa too. So it's really important to make sure that you have strong intention behind your use of those tools in order for them to really be the most effective. Awesome. So I think my next tip here is think about the student perspective. So this is something we've touched upon a little bit, thinking about how students are interacting with the tool. But I think one way that people, when somebody says think about the student perspective, I think something that might not always come to mind is actually test out the tool from the perspective of a student. Join your class as a student, play around with the interface, see what buttons students would need to click on. With a lot of tools too, what you see on your computer is very different from what you might see on an iPad. So really think about what the actual interface looks like from the student perspective, so that you can also help guide your students to be able to complete their assignments, use the tool in effective and meaningful ways.
And some of the tools offer like a teacher view, and then you can switch to student view to see exactly what your students would see when they interact with that.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a good point.
So my next one is threefold. Is it user-friendly? Is there a trial? Can I try it? So another thing you're going to think about before you get into some of these tech tools is, because some of them can be costly, is thinking about, is there a trial version? Is there like a 30-day trial, a 90-day trial? Can I try it before I buy it type deal? Is there a demo or something I can check out before I go in and purchase this item or ask my district to purchase the item? So I would definitely recommend checking to see if there's a trial or a demo version, to see if it's user-friendly, easy to use, saves you teacher time. Because if it doesn't, that's okay. You can walk away from that tool and find something else. There's so many tools out there that you can find that will fit your need, fit your why, fit your lesson, and help support your students. You just got to try them out sometimes. So whenever you are, thinking about purchasing a technology tool, if you're in that space that you're able to do so, or do a purchase order, whenever you're writing out those purchase orders to buy the tech tool, think about writing in there how this tool will help your students, how this tool will help you as a teacher, how this tool can help the school, and really think about how you can, and maybe if you're able to, like, put in links in there to examples of stuff that you've created with this tool with your students, just to help amplify that purchase order or that cost for that district to make if they are thinking about purchasing some tools. So think about it. Can you try it? Is there a trial? And then if you are able to purchase, and if it's something you're interested in, you can add in links to additional information or things that you've created.
For sure. And a little pro tip too, most tech tools, the free version is pretty much as good as the paid version, at least in my experience. So be sure that you actually read the differences between the free and the paid before you decide to go in and make that purchase.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I like that. Great tip.
Yeah, I recently was wrestling with that with a tech tool, trying to figure out since I'm in the tech department at my school, I make a lot of the decisions around which apps we should, get school licenses for. So yeah, anyways, I noticed that it's a good tip, good catch. Can save you and your school a lot of money. And so for my next tip, it's thinking about ways that tech can make your life and your job easier. When I think about EdTech in my mind, I always go to students. However, there are so many really great tech tools that you can use to actually make your life and your job easier. Even things as simple as keyboard shortcuts. Maybe that sounds silly, but I save so much time by being adept with keyboard shortcuts. So that if you aren't familiar with using things other than copy paste, you should totally try and familiarize yourself with keyboard shortcuts. That's a great way to save time and make your life easier. becoming more adept at figuring out bookmarking strategies instead of bookmarking everything, being really strategic about the things you bookmark, using Google Keep as a tool to stay organized, and sort of have a checklist for your day can be a really helpful tool. So ultimately use tech tools that aren't going to make your life more difficult as a teacher. Really, tech is here to make your life easier, to help you save time. So make sure you lean into that and don't just use tech because it seems like a good idea. Really think about how it might make your job as a teacher easier.
I like that. Control C, Control V, all the way, baby.
Exactly.
I like that. Yeah, those keyboard shortcuts. Google Keep for sure. And I love that it's a site, or it's an extension, a site and an app. So it is all the syncing going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love that, Maddie. That was great. My last tip is plan B, C, and D. So friends, when you are using technology, have a backup plan. Technology is great when it works. We all know that phrase, right? So it's so important to have a backup plan, in case the internet goes down, in case the power goes out, in case there's a fire drill or whatever there might be. Have a backup plan, whether that's something that they can do to reach the same objective in a different way using traditional methods, or maybe they have a discussion. Instead of recording on Flipgrid, they just do a discussion, in face to face in the classroom. So always have a backup plan so you're not scrambling. Have a backup plan. It'll save you teacher time and it'll save your students time.
Definitely. And I think that's true even teaching without tech. I remember being a first year teacher and, a lesson I thought was going to take 45 minutes took 5 minutes, and a lesson I thought was going to take 5 minutes would take 45. And so really having a backup plan and making sure that you have things in your back pocket that you can lean on if your lesson doesn't go as planned. That was probably a slight exaggeration about 5 and 45, but hopefully the point. So my last tip is to prioritize learning targets and student outcomes. I think a lot of teachers, when they want to experiment with using technology in their classroom, they think, okay, I'm going to create a lesson using Flipgrid. What should I do on Flipgrid? When instead, you should really shift your thinking and say, okay, I want to create a lesson about this topic area. Which tech tool can achieve that the best? So really making sure that you're prioritizing the learning target and the ways that that tech tool can, either boost student outcomes or actually lead to students, mastering that standard, whatever it might be.
Yeah, making sure that it's linked to the objectives, their standards. I love that. Flipping it from, I want to use Flipgrid, to how can I get my students to interact about reduce, reuse, recycle, how maybe they can create a video to show what they know instead of taking a test or something like that. So let's share out. Okay, I know we're both can totally geek out about EdTech probably for another hour or so. But if we had to narrow it down to 3 tools, I am wondering what your 3 would be. And I'm kind of wondering as I talk out loud what my 3 would be. But I have one in mind, if you don't mind me sharing a little bit. All right. So one of my new Fessage favorites is Office Lens. And it's an app that you can put on your phone, because so many times I see my students taking notes, but they're not taking notes the way you would think, like writing them in a notebook, right? Some students are taking pictures of slides or the whiteboard or a picture of a document, which is great. Take those pictures, save them, but take those pictures using Office Lens, because what it'll do is you take the picture with Office Lens, it'll clean it up a little bit, take all the stray marks away, and you can crop it. And you can save it as a PDF, as an image, or as an OCR Word doc. So it'll pull all the words and put it into a Word doc for you. So take your notes smarter with Office Lens. It really will. It really does change that, playing field when it comes to note taking, because now I have everything on my phone. It's stored digitally, and there's immersive reader built right into Office Lens. So for my students who need stuff read to them, it'll do that for them right in Office Lens, which is such a beautiful tool for accessibility and note-taking.
Okay, so I'm like internally freaking out because I have never heard of this tech tool before, and it sounds so cool and so awesome and so helpful. And I'm pretty familiar with Edtech tools, so I'm super excited to have learned about a new one today, and I'm definitely going to have to download it and check it out. But it sounds like it has lots of really great and practical application for students.
Absolutely. I'm interested in hearing one of yours.
So probably I have so many, but one of my favorite tech tools, one of my favorite tech tools right now is definitely Flipgrid. I know so many people are on the Flipgrid bandwagon, but I think that that's really for a reason. It's such a great reflection tool. It's such a great way for students who maybe aren't always comfortable being on camera. There's so many fun little elements that they can add to make it more engaging. I think also some teachers don't like the social media type vibe with the emojis and stuff, but I personally think that's something that students right now are just really comfortable with and familiar with. And so if you can bring that into the classroom and lean into student interest in that way, I think it can be a really powerful tool. So that's just one, kind of unique thought on Flipgrid. But yeah, it's a really great tool. So great for reflection, works really well for every single subject too. And I think it's hard to find tools that work for, math class, but also for history class.
Yes, I hear you on that. Yes, it is hard. I like how you talked about the emojis. It's really meeting your students where they are and implementing that technology that they're familiar with and comfortable with. And you can turn those things off and on, so you can moderate that if you don't want
I'm
it.
always,
Flipgrid
I'm
is
always
fun.
telling teachers to lean into student interests. And I'm not saying that, you should go out and become a TikTok star, but I think leaning into the things that students are excited about and really thinking about, what's going on in their lives can be a really effective thing to do as a teacher. They use tech at home, whether it's good or bad. Students are using technology right now, and especially now more than ever before. And so, figuring out ways that we can lean into the things that they're interested in and the tools that they like, I think the better things will be.
Yes, I love that. Thanks, Maddie. Let's see, another tool. Adobe Spark is really cool. I really enjoy using Adobe Spark to create videos. All you have to do is have like pictures or video that you want already, and it walks you through some different templates that you can create videos about. So like maybe one's a call to action, one's a travel video, one's a about me video. So for the student teachers listening out there and for our new teachers listening, you might want to create your teaching philosophy as a video to make it come to life. And you can create that in Adobe Spark and embed it right into a website, put it into your class website as well, or create a quick video of, your school year and send that out to your students. Kids love seeing their pictures on a video. So and they always have copyright free music, so you don't have to worry about any of that. And all the design work is done for you. Pick a theme, bada bing, bada boom. You got yourself a really nice video that you can share out. I always made videos for my students and I was a teacher for Christmas or and end of the year, and they always really enjoy that. It's just something unique that you can send along with them. Be like, hey, remember our time together? We did some great things. We did some great learning. We had lots of laughs and we had fun.
I love tools that make me feel like a graphic designer, but are really easy to use.
I know.
Yeah, but you feel so proud of yourself afterwards. You're like, wow, I made something amazing, and it's just click of a button. So I'll talk about Jamboard since we mentioned that. Jamboard is an awesome tool. Now I'm a little bit biased because I'm obsessed with, design thinking as a STEM teacher. I think it's just a really great tool for, students to engage in that sort of sticky note style brainstorming. If you're actually interested in learning about Jamboard, I posted a YouTube video on my YouTube channel a week ago on actually a full tutorial on how to use Jamboard. So it's for beginner teachers who are looking to try the tool. So shameless plug, if you want to learn more, you can check out that video. But it's just a really great collaboration tool for students to, brainstorm their ideas. Like I said, it's also a great exit ticket activity. So as a teacher, you can put, a question up at the top, and you can have students each give individual responses on their own sticky notes. It's a really great application for it too, is if you're a math teacher, I think it's really hard for math teachers to find good EdTech tools that work well for them. And I think Jamboard is awesome. It's really great for math teachers to either, use to explain concepts, or also for students to be able to turn in math work, especially if you're doing distance learning right now. You can set like graph paper backgrounds, different things like that. So if you're a math teacher, you definitely would want to check that out.
I love this. I love how we're giving tools that can fit a variety of grade levels and subject areas all rolled into one.
Oh, totally. I mean, I've used Jamboard as an adult, and I've used it with my elementary students. So it's a great tool that you can use across a variety of grade levels.
Love it. Yeah, I used it with my college students. We did Bitmoji attendance. They had to drop their Bitmoji into a Jamboard and share on a sticky note what they love about fall. And that's what I used for attendance. Yes, I could click download attendance on my Microsoft Teams, but it was just so much more fun to have them, interact with the tool a little bit and talk about how they can use it in their own classroom.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, like I said at the beginning, that's such a great example of how you are practicing what you're teaching, that you're giving.
Yeah, it's kind of meta, like you said.
Yeah, that's really great that you did that.
Oh, cool. Thanks. So I would have to say my next one, it's a toss-up because this week we've been talking about formative assessment tools in the class, and I think one of my favorites would have to be Wiser, and it's Wizer. And when I first introduced this to my students, I thought it was like wizard, like it's like short for wizard because it's like a worksheet wizard. I was like, oh, this is so cool. But then I talked to the CEO and she's like, so do you like Wiser? I was like, oh, yeah, totally loving Wiser. But what I like about it is there's a whole library of worksheets. I know worksheets get a bad rap becoming digital. So I'll just explain it and then people can make their own assumptions. So what I love about Wiser is that I can do different types of assessments. So I can do the multiple choice, the true and false. I can do matching. I can do labeling an image. So parts of flower, parts of for the life cycle of a frog or a butterfly, whatever. I can do short answer response, fill in the blank, sorting non-living and living things, just some examples. And I can share that out with my students and share it through Google Classroom, a link or whatever, and get my data based on that. And for some of the questions, like the multiple choice, the true and false, short answer, it'll automatically grade for me. So saving some teacher time. I can also input video and images and embed content in there. So if I want to do some app smashing, I can throw in a Canva that I made. I can embed that in there or something for my students. So I think it's a really neat way to assess students on their learning. It saves me some teacher time. It's interactive in the sense that with the matching, the dragging and dropping, the moving items for a fill in the blank question. I think it's a really unique way to assess students. And then there's other options that are you have to pay for, differentiation. So you can have long question stem and it'll send out different types of questions to different students. You can also have this next part is not the paid version, it's in the free version as well. You can have audio support, so you can have your voice, read the instructions, or you can have a video sharing expectations.
Awesome. That's a really great one that I'll also have to check out because I've heard of it, but I haven't really played around with it too much. So again, you're giving me great things to look into.
And so are you, my friend. I'm loving this. This is great.
I know, this is so fun. For my third tech tool, this is kind of cheating because I'm going to say two, but they're really similar and they're by the same company. So I think I said this at the beginning of the episode, but I love project-based learning. It's one of the things I'm the most passionate about in the world. And something that I've just been struggling with right now is thinking about ways that we can bring authenticity into the project-based learning experience for students who are in this distance learning environment. But I think that's true in the classroom too. It can be, you can feel limited by, classroom budget, all these different factors that make authenticity in PBL feel really difficult to achieve as a teacher. So the tool that I think are really great to help achieve that are Google Earth and Google Expeditions. So they're very similar in that students can go on virtual field trips to actually be able to explore a certain area of the world more in depth. And so I think those can be really great tools to allow students to have an authentic learning experience without ever having to leave the classroom, or right now for a lot of students, they're home. And so instead of, if you're in Spanish class and you want to go visit Madrid, you can do that without ever having to go on an airplane. So I think that that's something really cool about technology, is you can bring the outside world into your classroom. So those are two really great tools to achieve that.
That's awesome. I love how you're bringing students' learning experiences out of the classroom using educational technology, going back to those things that we talked about. Is it authentic? Thinking about the why, learning targets, outcomes, objectives, standards. Is it like engaging our students? I love that. That's awesome.
And even as a teacher too, like you can create your own expeditions using Google Tour Creator. I'm not sure if anybody's heard of that before, but one of the teachers at my school in the spring, when we weren't able to go on field trips, she actually made a virtual field trip using Google Tour Creator of little lending libraries that are around the Los Angeles area, which is where I'm located, for her kindergarten students. So because they couldn't, go on this really fun annual field trip that they have of going to check out lending libraries, they're actually still able to do the experience virtually. So it's pretty neat that there's so many different capabilities. I mean, Google's a gigantic company, so can do some pretty cool things. Yeah, it was neat.
That is so cool. I love it. So we can create our own tours in Google Tour Builder or Google Expeditions.
And Google Tour Creator, and then it's like linked with Google Expeditions. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. I think we're going to have you on for another episode talking all about that, because that sounds like a really neat learning experience for students and for teachers.
Definitely. It's really cool.
So Maddie, before we close out today, can you share with my audience how we can all connect with you?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm pretty active on Instagram. So you can find me on Instagram at Edtech Class. You can check out my podcast, the Edtech Classroom Podcast. You can send me an email if you want to chat. My email is myedtechclassroom@gmail.com. Those are probably the three main places I'm the most active. If I think of something else, we can put it in the episode description.
I like that. Thanks, Maddie.
Yeah. And what about you?
Yeah. So you can find me over on Instagram at sfesich. That's SFECICH. I have the same handle over on Twitter as well. And you can check out my site, sfesich.com, for more information. And I'd love to connect with each. Thank you so much, Maddie.
There you have it, EduMagicians. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. For more EduMagic, check out sfesich.com and follow Dr. Sam on Twitter and Instagram at sfesich. Until next time, you have the EduMagic within you.